Hello and welcome back to the Chaotic Coffee Table, and here today I've got all the miniatures that arrived in the last parcel from a channel supporter. Now these are all different brands, they're not all Kyoto, so I couldn't really do an assembly video here, but I just wanted to have a look at all these figures with you because they really do go to show what is possible in terms of detail and quality at this scale. I mean, these really are tiny little figures, and there are several different brands. A couple of the best ones are actually unbranded, and other brands I've never heard of, but these are all brilliant figures. None of these figures are figures I've ever had before. There's a couple of the Dinosaur ones in amongst this lot as well, and they're just absolutely brilliant. So without further ado, let's have a quick look at them, and I hope my camera behaves itself for you today. It's always a little tricky filming miniatures. So starting off, we've got this lovely Furuta Chocosaurs, Japanese Gashapon, Tyrannosaurus Rex, I think. It's definitely a Tyrannosaurid. As you can see, the teeth are individually painted, even though this is a tiny, tiny little figure. It's in an extremely dynamic pose. It's got a really nicely painted base to it as well. And these, I think, came in chocolate eggs, something akin to a Kinder Egg. If we got figures like this in Kinder Eggs, I'd be absolutely delighted. So that's our Tyrannosaurus Rex. Next up, now I'm not too sure what species this is. To me it looks like it might be a Megalosaurus. It's got 3 fingers on the hands. Again, in a very dynamic running pose. Lovely coloration here. In individually painted teeth. The camera will just focus, there we go. If anybody does know what species this is, please do let me know. It's the other thing with filming miniatures is getting the lighting correct. As you can see, the base on this one's very nice as well. So that's our Choco Pterosaurs number 2. And finally we'll have this gorgeous little Triceratops, even the nostrils painted on here. So even though they're very small, quite basic models, which obviously required some assembly, they're really, really nicely done. The anatomy is quite good. Obviously they're a little bit thin and shrink wrapped for modern tastes, but the amount of detail, the squeeze into these little figures is absolutely amazing. And they're absolutely brilliant. There's even detail on the back of the frill of this one. I'll get my thumbnail out the way. Fabulous stuff. So next up, there's this absolutely glorious and extremely colourful Kyoto Parasaurolophus. I imagine this fabulous sort of blue, gold, teal and purple and white Parasaurolophus is one of their first lines. I've never seen such a colourful Parasaurolophus. And it's an absolutely gorgeous little figure. It really kind of goes to show how Kyoto developed, but where they started from was already a very good position. Beautiful. Next up, this one's an interesting one. This is a Dunkleosteus skull. Now Dunkleosteus was a genus I was unfamiliar with because when I was a little girl the bony headed fish was Dinichthys, so I didn't understand how things had changed to becoming Dunkleosteus. Of course, Dinichthys is still an animal too, but further discoveries have changed things somewhat, and you can see the detailing on this wonderful Kyoto model. This is completely correct to the fossil reconstructions. And furthermore, this figure is slightly articulated. There's movement at the back of the head there. There's also movement in the jaws. So this is a real little museum piece. Just put him back on his stand there. So next off, I'm going to choose this genus, which I was entirely unfamiliar with. This is Cinemis. This is a prehistoric turtle. I don't know much more about it other than that. It's got these great big spurs over the thighs. This is a Kyoto, as you can see. This is the firm plastics. This is one of the earlier ones. Fabulous details on the claws and on the head, which is a little like a red-eared terrapin. Beautiful colours. Detail throughout. Gorgeous little figure. We do have another turtle in the background here. Excuse me, I'm having a little trouble with my camera set up here today. Another turtle in the background, which is Archelon. It could be Archelon or it could be Archelon, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Now this is an absolutely stunning figure. Whoever sculpted these figures really understands modern animals and how they move and how the skin wrinkles and the features of them. You can see even the inside of the mouth is painted here. The amount of detail we've got on this tiny little turtle figure is absolutely exquisite. Absolutely amazing. Really nicely painted as well. Unusual coloration here. And of course it comes on this lovely transparent base, which is just dropped on the table. Pop him over here. Next up we have a PNSO figure. This is Confuciusornis, and this is the male version because it's got the tail streamers and dimorphism is known in these species. So they've chosen to give this sort of blue eye spot, somewhat like a peacock. It was an enantiornithine bird, which means that they didn't survive the extinction of the dinosaurs, and the name refers to the way the humerus and the shoulder articulate, which is the opposite way to a modern bird. Of course, as an enantiornith, it had teeth in the jaws or the beak and also claws on the hands. But this is a beautifully designed figure from PNSO of what is a very important genus. Lovely coloration on here, lovely pose. They're always a little tricky to pose when they're in a flying posture, but it really does show off how beautiful the sculpt is. Excellent work from PNSO. Next up, I've got an Acanthostega. Now, Acanthostega was almost a sort of stem amphibian. This was where you could really see the fish were starting to evolve. This is a Devonian creature. This is a Chiodon, and as you can see it's made of that sort of translucent plastic, which really sort of adds to the sort of amphibian aquatic feel. Beautiful detailing on the skin here. So this is one of the sort of ray fin fish, 8 fingers on each hand. It's on its way to becoming an amphibian. Wasn't quite one, couldn't walk on land. But this is a very important genus in the evolution of life on Earth. And of course this one came with a little information pamphlet here. Came with some stickers in case you want to display this in a little case. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful work from Chiodon. Such a shame that they're not more popular outside of Japan. Here we have an unbranded, I've got no idea who this is by, Tyrannosaurus rex, and it's a lipped Tyrannosaurus rex. You can see the teeth are completely enclosed here. It's also very anatomically correct. It's quite a languid pose, quite gentle, nothing dynamic about it. It appears to be based on Stan, looking at the shape of the back and the hips. Very, very nice little figure. Lovely coloration on it. As you can see, the tail is a separate part on this one. And this one goes with a lovely little Triceratops figure, which is clearly the same, but is also unbranded. Now the anatomy of this one's absolutely fantastic, and you can see the detailing on the frill here and the horns. This is one of the nicest little Triceratops figures I've ever seen. You can see how tiny these are compared to my thumb, and yet how nicely done they are. Nice dry brushing on the paintwork. Lovely detailing on the frill, you can see at the back there. Slightly more dynamic pose with this one. The outer claws are painted, however, that is still a slightly contentious issue. Modern archosaurs, of course, don't have claws on the outer digits, but it is suspected that their old relatives might have. Now this is a Eugene figure. I'd never come across Eugene before. I believe there's something to do with Chiodon. But you can see the skin detail on this Dimetrodon. All the fabulous teeth in the mouth. Again, lovely paintwork. Slightly sprawling. Dimetrodon is thought to have been a slightly more upright creature. It was, of course, more closely related to us than it was to other reptiles. It's a stem mammal, effectively, a pelycosaur, a mammal-like reptile. And this is a really nice rendition of the animal. Next up, we have this fantastic rearing Arsinotherium. All the bosses on its head. This is an animal I wish the likes of Eofauna would produce a scale model of some of these interesting sort of rhinoceros relatives. They're certainly producing a lot of fantastic pachyderms. And this is such a dynamic pose for what was such a large, powerful animal, and beautifully rendered, beautifully sculpted. Amazing work from Chiodon. Right, just sort of have a brief pause there because we've had a visit from the postman. unexpectedly, and a very large parcel has arrived. An unexpected very large parcel has arrived from my channel subscriber, just as I'm doing this, which is amazing timing. So obviously I've not opened that box yet, but thank you in advance to my channel supporter, and I'm great looking forward to finding out what's in this box. It's a rather large box. For now, let's get back to the miniatures. Here we have a fabulous colorata Glyptodon with excellent detail and lovely paintwork. I've never had a colorata figure before, and I'm really impressed with this. Very, very good. I think that's upside down there, isn't it? Yeah, you can see all the detail on the underside of the tail. Glyptodon, another one of these iconic early mammal species, of course related to modern armadillos and sloths. Arthrodeers, I believe they're called. This version depicts it in quite a traditional way, with almost a slightly rodent-like head. Some depictions give it a bit of a trunk on the face. We might find out in future with further discoveries. Really, really nice figure. The Natural History Museum's Invicta produced a fabulous Glyptodon years ago. Here we have a Kyoto T-Rex. Seem to have done Tyrannosaurus Rex quite frequently, Kyoto, and it's always excellent. They seem to do it in every sort of different colour. They've chosen a grey here, which is unusual to see T-Rex depicted in. Even at this scale, still get all the detail of the teeth and the binocular vision. Brilliant work. I believe this one as well pops off his base. Yes, he does, and there's a little footprint there for you to fix the foot into. Very nice touch. Next we have a Trilobite. I'm not too sure what species of Trilobite this is. It looks like one of the calamine species that could roll themselves into a ball, but I don't know for sure. I don't know a huge amount about them. I've forgotten a lot about them. But this, it's unusual to see a full-bodied trilobite. Often when they're found as fossils, you just find this sort of central part, the carapace, and quite often they're molts. This trilobite molted its skin as it grew and aged, but this shows you all the soft tissues, the gills, the legs and the antennae, and this is an absolutely exquisite little figure, and this has quickly become one of my favourites in this new collection I now have custody of. Trilobites are one of those things that are sort of quite precious to fossil collectors. They're up there with ammonites. Next off we have a rather fabulous Kyoto Ichthyosaurus. Now this just is Ichthyosaurus. Of course it comes again with a little pamphlet and some labels if you want to display it in its own little case. You can see it's made out of quite a shiny plastic, this one. So it's nice that they're considering the materials when they're creating their figures as well. This is a really muscular, colourful version of Ichthyosaurus. Quite often marine animals tend to come across in shades of blue and grey and white. And here they've chosen to make it quite colourful because there are exceptions to the rule. And speaking of that, we'll have another one here. This is one that I did have to build, and it was very tricky on account of that neck counterbalancing everything. And this is a fantastic little Elasmosaurus. The detail on that little tiny snake-like head there. You wouldn't want to mess with this thing. It would be the stuff of nightmares if you encountered it in the ocean. It's in a beautiful dynamic pose. They've really thought about the skin detail because large animals in the ocean do tend to pick up various barnacles and other crustaceans on their skin. And this is in a very dynamic sort of hunting pose as it's swimming. It's got a nice base as well. You can see some colours on the base there. It was a tricky one to put together. I'm very glad that I did manage to in the end. Again, it's in lovely colours. And this camera does not want to focus on the head. It's such a tiny little figure, this one. There we go. I really hope you can see that and you can make it out. These marine reptiles really were quite something. Of course, it wouldn't have been what you really had to worry about in the ocean because they're probably quite passive. What you would have had to really worry about in the ocean would have been the mosasaurs. Next off we have this fabulous PNSO Guidraco. I'd never had many of the PNSO miniatures, and now that I have got them, I've got a heck of a lot of appreciation for them because they are excellent. And I do kind of wish that PNSO, or indeed any other of the top brands, such as How Long Good, would make more scale pterosaurs, because it's clear, looking at the size of these, that they are able to produce exquisitely detailed figures. These, of course, came out quite early on in PNSO's career. Imagine what they could produce these days. It'd be lovely to have some scaled pterosaurs to go with the fabulous dinosaurs they give us. Next pterosaur we have is, I think it's a female pteranodon, looking at the shape of the crest on the head and the proportions. And this is shown doing the skim feeding that was postulated for pteranodon. And the reason I'm thinking it's a female pteranodon is because it hasn't got the long crest on the back of the head, and I can't think of any other pterosaur which just got a little bump on the back of the head like this with these kind of proportions. Of course, there is dimorphism known in pterosaurs as well. There's none particularly known in dinosaurs, unless you specifically find a dinosaur with medullary bone preserved. And that has been known for Tyrannosaurus rex, but there are still no characteristics which otherwise physically differentiate it from the other Tyrannosaurus rex. But there are obvious differences known in pterosaurs and, of course, the early birds. Here we have a brand I've never come across before, and that is a really nicely done tiny little Sinoceratops. This is a little PVC model. Lovely coloration and detail on this, as you can see. T-Arts. Never come across that brand before. But whoever they are very, very good. And I'm very impressed with this little figure and all the detail that it's got upon it. You can see how well painted the tongue is in the mouth there. Next up we have a Majungasaurus from PNSO. This is one of the slightly larger figures that they produced next to the miniatures, along with the Tianulong, etc. There's about 4 of them. I think the Anchuanosaurus was one as well. As you can see, it's got lovely skin detail, nice active running pose. It's kind of on a base. These little miniature dinosaurs really were wonderful little things, and it's a shame that they don't make them anymore. Especially because we don't have many Abelisaurids in larger form, and they're a really interesting group of theropods who sort of buck the trends of having small heads and small arms. Here we have fantastic Smilodon. This is really beautifully done, and I like the way it's got little spots on the hide. You can really see the musculature and the difference in the shape of Smilodon compared to modern lion. With this sculpt, you can see how thick and muscular the neck is and how wide the jaws open, and those great big fangs at the front, of course. This is in a very active, dynamic pose. Really looks very, very aggressive. If we look down the front here, you can see how much wider the head was than a modern felid. Amazing stuff from Kyoto here. You can even see the inside of the jaws are painted, and there's some little teeth in there as well. And this is so tiny. Absolutely brilliant. Again, this one comes with a little label if you want to display it in its own box or its own little stand. Next up we have another Dimetrodon. This is a Kyoto Dimetrodon, and I really like the way the sail's got a slight ripple of movement to it with this figure. Really like the colours of this figure too, and the general proportions and shape of it. And yes, it is in a resting position, so it's quite flat and sprawling, but this is a really brilliant little figure. In terms of the detail, it's fully lipped. Kyoto seem to have been quite ahead in terms of producing the reptile, ancient reptile and dinosaur figures with lips. So that's really nice to see as well. Nice coloration on this one as well. Again, he comes with a little assembly label and information for display. Oops, just shift that and that out of the way. So I've come into the end, folks. We've only got a few left now. And one is this fantastic Kyoto Anhanguera, and I'll say it again, I wish we had more scale pterosaurs, because these really show up what is possible in terms of detailing and quality. And bearing in mind that in Japan these generally are little capsule figures that aren't particularly expensive, and yet they can produce these to this standard. You know, it is entirely possible. It'd be amazing to see more pterosaurs. I love the pose on this one as well. Excellent detailing, teeth in the jaws, they're all painted. Amazing work. Finally, my favourite of all. This is an early Jurassic mammal. This is the Eugin Hencalitherium. Now, there's 2 versions of this. There's a more orange coloured version who's posed on a branch. This one is on the base. But whoever created this little figure really understands mammals and really understands how mammals move. And I hope you can make out the detailing and how precise this little shrew-like mammal is. It's about half life size, although I've looked at measurements online. They say that the skull was around 4 centimetres long, which would make this 1 to 4, because this tiny little head here is about 1 centimetre long, making the whole thing in life about the size of a house mouse. You see how well painted the little toes are there and everything. This is an exquisite little figure, and it will be taking pride of place on my dedicated Jurassic shelf. I cannot thank my channel supporter enough for these figures, especially this one, which I'm absolutely delighted with. And as someone who doesn't tend to deviate towards mammals or indeed anything that's not a dinosaur, having all these beautiful miniatures in my collection really is, you know, it's an absolute pleasure and a joy. And I hope everybody's enjoyed having a look at these with me, and I hope to see you in the next video, which will be very quickly, considering what's just been arrived in the post. Thank you.